My name is Lena Grace, and I'm 27 years old. Sometimes I ask myself, how am I still standing after everything I've endured? How am I still breathing, still functioning like a normal person, when everything inside me was shattered so long ago? My story doesn't begin with anger or revenge. It begins with a little girl who once believed that love would always be enough, that family meant safety, that heartache would pass like a summer storm. But everything changed the day I lost my father. I was only 7. One moment, he was kneeling down, helping me tie my shoes and smiling at my silly questions. That same evening, he was gone forever. A car accident. Quick. Brutal. Final. The silence that followed wasn't just in the house. It settled in my chest like stone. I stopped asking questions after that. There was no one left who cared to answer them. My mother, Tina, moved on almost instantly. Within a year, she married Leon, a man whose smile was thin and whose presence felt like a locked door. He wasn't cruel, not outwardly, but he never spoke to me unless he had to. Never offered kindness. Just cold glances and polite nods like I was some distant obligation.
Still, I tried.
I tried so hard. I stayed quiet. I followed the rules. I got good grades. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I was perfect enough, he would notice me. Maybe Mom would smile the way she used to. But she didn't. Not for me. And then came Emily, my half-sister. With her arrival, everything shifted again, but this time permanently. When Emily was born, our house transformed overnight. The warmth that had once occasionally flickered my way vanished completely. All the bedtime stories, the soft lullabies, the gentle hugs, they belonged to her now. I watched it all from the hallway. Always from the hallway. At first, I told myself, she's a baby, Lena. You're the big sister now. Be strong. But the shift never balanced. It just kept growing. The love and attention flowed in only one direction, toward Emily. I'd peek from behind doorways as Tina pressed kisses to Emily's cheeks, called her my angel, and sang to her softly. And me? I just stood there like I didn't exist, an extra piece in a puzzle that had already been completed without me. Then one afternoon I heard it. I wasn't supposed to, but I did. Tina, standing in the kitchen with Leon, whispered, "At least now we finally have a real family." I stood frozen in the hallway, Emily's giggles echoing from the living room like a haunting melody. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just went upstairs, sat on my bed, and stared at the ceiling for hours. Something hollowed out inside me that day. But still, I stayed quiet. I smiled when spoken to. I helped with chores. I tried to be everything a good daughter should be. By the time I was a teenager, I knew the truth. I was a guest in my own home. And the saddest part? Even then, I kept trying to earn what was never meant for me. The house we lived in, the one where I was treated like a shadow, wasn't even truly my mother's. It belonged to my grandfather, my father's father, a quiet, stern man who rarely visited but never forgot a birthday. He didn't say much, but he noticed everything. When I turned 18, he showed up at our front door. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. He didn't ask to come inside. He just handed me a sealed envelope and looked me straight in the eye. "This was your father's wish," he said. "No matter what happens, you'll always have a home." Then he walked away. Inside the envelope was something that took my breath away. The deed to the house. The house I'd grown up in. The house I'd been treated like a burden in. The house I'd been invisible in.
It was now legally mine.
It was worth $800,000, but in that moment, it felt priceless. Not because of its size or location, but because it was the only real thing I had from my father. A final act of love, silent but powerful. When I told Tina, I expected surprise. Maybe even a flicker of pride. But all I saw was panic. She blinked rapidly and forced a smile. "Lena, what are you planning to do with the house?" I wanted her approval so badly. I still did. So I smiled and said something naive, something hopeful. "Nothing. You and Leon and Emily can keep living here. Just like always." Her relief was instant. She hugged me, tightly, like I had saved her life. That hug should have told me everything. But I was too desperate for love to see it for what it was. After that day, I gave more than ever. I worked part-time at a small bookstore while attending college full-time. I skipped vacations, took on weekend shifts, tutored local kids for extra cash. Also, I could help keep the household running, the same household where I was barely acknowledged. Meanwhile, Emily, now a teenager with a sharp tongue and endless demands, lived like the world owed her everything. She slept until noon, threw tantrums over slow Wi-Fi, failed most of her classes, and still, I paid for it all. Her tuition, her clothes, her makeup. Tina's excuse? She's still growing. She needs support. Leon never said much. He'd just stare at me at dinner with that cold, unreadable expression, like I was some unwelcome tenant overstaying her lease. And me? I kept going, because I had convinced myself that this was what a good daughter did. A good sister. A good person. But the truth I didn't want to admit was this. Being good doesn't mean being loved. And being family doesn't mean being valued. I was the only thing keeping them afloat. And in the process, I was drowning. Then came one Tuesday night. We had a so-called family dinner every week. I never skipped it. Even though each time, I felt like a visitor in my own house. I never brought up that the house was legally mine. Not once. I just sat there pretending to belong. That evening, I had barely taken off my coat when Emily came skipping into the living room like she was floating on air. Oh my God, he proposed, she screamed, practically shoving her hand in my face. A diamond ring sparkled on her finger, catching the light and my breath. I blinked. Ethan? I asked, recognizing the name of the polite, soft-spoken boy from next door. She squealed and spun around like she was on a reality show. Just a month earlier, I had caught my own boyfriend cheating. I was still nursing that heartbreak in silence. And here she was glowing, sparkling, winning. Wow. I managed. Congratulations. She beamed. I don't even care about school anymore. This is my future. That's when Tina jumped in like she'd been waiting for her cue. This is wonderful news. We need to start planning immediately. And just like that, I became invisible again. They were off, talking about country clubs, white doves, designer dresses, 5-tier cakes. I tried to stay calm. That sounds expensive, I said. Tina waved her hand dismissively. Don't be so negative, Lena. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. They kept dreaming aloud. Celebrity DJs, ice sculptures, choreographed first dances. I stared at them like I didn't live in the same world. I think I'll head home, I finally said, grabbing my keys. They didn't even glance at me, too busy arguing over whether ivory or pearl napkins were more elegant. On the drive back to my apartment, one thought kept repeating in my head. This wedding is going to cost me more than I'm ready to give. A week passed. I kept hoping they'd come to their senses. That maybe the excitement would fade and they'd realize how absurd it all was. But that hope died the moment my phone rang and I saw Tina's name flash across the screen. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. The kind she only used when she wanted something. Lena, sweetheart, can you come by the house? It's important. I was already drained from a 10-hour shift at the bookstore, but I went anyway. Out of habit. Out of hope. Out of some desperate echo of loyalty I hadn't yet unlearned. The moment I walked through the door, Emily shoved a thick binder into my hands, overflowing with clippings, brochures, fabric swatches. I've planned everything, she announced proudly. The venue has a garden, a waterfall, and they release white doves after the vows. Isn't that magical? I flipped through the pages. Designer dresses. Imported flowers. A string quartet. I swallowed hard. This looks expensive. Oh. And the band? They played at a celebrity's wedding, she added like it was a badge of honor. Did you set a budget? Of course. She handed me a printed sheet. I scanned the numbers and felt my chest tighten. The venue alone was more than my entire year's rent. Add the catering, the designer dress, the lighting, the decor, the band, it was outrageous. Are you serious? I asked, unable to mask the disbelief in my voice. Emily frowned. Why would I joke about my wedding? I turned to Tina, hoping she'd inject some reality into the moment. But she was already defensive. Lena, don't ruin this for her. I kept my voice even. I already pay for her college, her clothes, her living expenses. I can't fund this fantasy, too. Tina scoffed. That's what family does. We support each other. No, I said, cold and clear. I'm not her sister anymore. I'm her bank account. Emily crossed her arms. You make good money now. You can afford it. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. That's when she muttered something under her breath. Something she clearly intended me to hear.
Fine.
I'll just ask Daddy. I stiffened.
Daddy.
Leon, who hadn't looked me in the eye for years. Suddenly, he was their solution. And in that moment I knew they were planning something bigger. And I needed to brace myself. 3 days later, I received a group message from Tina. Family meeting tonight. Important.
Please don't be late.
I knew exactly what it was about. But still, I went. Not out of respect. Not out of love. Out of curiosity. I needed to see just how far they were willing to go. When I arrived, Leon was already seated at the dining table, arms folded, expression unreadable but cold. Emily stood beside him with that smug little smile that always meant trouble. And Tina, she looked satisfied. Like a plan had come together. We've been talking, she began, her tone calm, fake. And we've come to a solution. A fair one.
Fair.
That word made my stomach turn. We think, she continued, that the best option is for you to sell the house. I blinked. Excuse me? Leon jumped in. You live alone. You don't need a whole house. It's not like you're planning to raise a family there. Emily added. It just makes sense. Sell it. Move into a small apartment. Use the money for the wedding. There'll be plenty left over for me and Ethan to start a new life. I looked at each of them, slowly. The money? I asked. Yes, Tina said brightly, as if she were discussing a grocery list. The house is worth what? $800,000? After the wedding, there'll still be a lot left. It's a smart investment. That word again. Investment. My hands clenched under the table. That house isn't an investment, I said quietly. It's my inheritance. My father's. My grandfather's. It's the only thing I have that's truly mine. Leon stood. Don't be dramatic. I stood too. My voice flat and even. You're asking me to sell the only thing I have. So Emily can have a fairy tale wedding she hasn't worked a single day for. Emily's face twisted. You're so selfish. You want me to have a cheap wedding like some loser?
Tina snapped.
We gave you everything, Lena. And this is how you repay us. Everything, I shouted. You gave me nothing. I paid for your bills, your daughter's lifestyle, your peace of mind while you ignored me. And then it happened. Leon's face twisted in rage. He grabbed the heavy ceramic vase from the table, a decorative one that had always seemed unnecessary. And before I could even flinch, he hurled it. It slammed against the side of my head. Pain exploded. My knees buckled. But I didn't fall. I reached into my purse, blood now dripping down my face, and pulled out my phone. My fingers trembled. But my voice didn't. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Then I dialed 911. I stood there, one hand pressed to the bleeding side of my head, the other gripping my phone like a lifeline. My vision blurred, but I held myself upright. I wasn't going to collapse in front of them, not now. 911, what's your emergency? My stepfather just assaulted me, I said, voice steady despite the ringing in my ears. He threw a ceramic vase at my head. I'm injured. Please send help immediately. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed across the walls of my house. The sirens cut through the stillness like a blade. The moment the front door opened and the officer stepped in, I saw their eyes lock on the blood streaming down my cheek, the shattered vase at my feet. They didn't hesitate. Leon tried to explain. She was yelling. It wasn't intentional. She's overreacting. But officer number 1 didn't even blink. Sir, place your hands where I can see them. You're under arrest for assault with a deadly object. Leon's face turned purple with rage. This is ridiculous. As the officer cuffed him, Tina rushed forward. This is all a misunderstanding. She provoked him. She's always been dramatic. Officer number 2 turned to her, unmoved. You and your daughter stood by and did nothing while he injured her. You're both being charged as accomplices. Emily shrieked. You can't do this to us. But they could. And they did. As the three of them were led toward the police cars, I stood in the hallway, shaky but upright. Blood clung to my temple, but my voice was clear. This was your last chance. You chose violence. You chose greed. I'm going to make sure all three of you get exactly what you deserve in court. Emily spat. You'll regret this. I met her stare, without flinching.
No, Emily.
For the first time in my life, I won't. The paramedics gently eased me onto a stretcher. One of them offered a soft smile. You're going to be okay. I nodded, tears finally spilling. Not from pain, but from release. For the first time in years, I wasn't a shadow. I was a voice. The hospital was cold, bright, and quiet, almost too quiet. But after years of chaos, the silence felt oddly comforting. I lay on a gurney in a private room, my head wrapped in gauze. The machines beeped steadily beside me, a strange reassurance that I was still here. The doctor told me I was lucky. No skull fracture. No concussion. Just deep bruising and a gash that would scar. You're strong, the nurse said gently. To stay on your feet like that, most people would have collapsed. I gave her a faint smile. I've had a lot of practice. When I was discharged the next day, I didn't go to a friend's house or check into a hotel. I went home. My home. The house was still. Still in a way it had never been before. No voices muttering in the kitchen. No eyes judging me from across the table. No tension humming in the walls. Just a quiet that healed instead of hurt. I walked through every room. I ran my fingers across the banister. I paused by the fireplace, the one where the vase used to sit, the same vase that had shattered my skull and shattered my illusion. That illusion? That if I gave enough, I'd be loved enough?
It was over now.
The next morning, I made an appointment with Mr. Blake Harrison, a respected attorney recommended by my Aunt Colleen. He reviewed the police report, the medical records, and the officer's body cam footage. You have a strong case, he said, his tone calm but confident. Assault with intent to cause bodily harm. And, based on their behavior, we can also file charges for aiding and abetting against your mother and half-sister. I nodded. I'm not here for warnings or probation. I want real consequences. No deals. No mercy. Then we'll fight for exactly that. He moved quickly. Within 48 hours, I had a restraining order against all three of them. The official charges followed soon after. Meanwhile, people started calling. Kevin, my cousin, left a voicemail. Lena, maybe you should drop this. They're still your family. I didn't even call back. Aunt Colleen, who had always treated me with some decency, called once. This is going to be a long, painful road, sweetheart. So was living with them, I replied. And I survived that. This time, I wasn't going to shrink or settle. This time, I was coming for justice. The courthouse was colder than the hospital, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. I sat in the plaintiff section, flanked by Mr. Blake Harrison and his assistant, while across from me sat the people who had tried to destroy my peace. Leon looked worn out in a wrinkled beige suit, his scowl barely holding together. Tina, rigid and defiant, had her arms crossed so tightly it looked like she was bracing for impact. And Emily, dressed like she was attending a fashion show, refused to look at me. The judge entered, the room hushed, and the trial began. The prosecution wasted no time. They played the body cam footage, the shattered vase, the blood on my face, Tina and Emily's blank stares, the officers reading them their rights. The courtroom fell silent. Then came the medical report confirming blunt force trauma, photographs of my injury, statements from the paramedics. The full scope laid bare. When Mr. Harrison took the floor, he didn't just outline the night of the assault. He painted the full picture. Years of financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and finally, physical violence. This wasn't one incident, he told the court. This was the breaking point of a young woman who was treated like a servant in her own home. A daughter denied love. A sister expected to fund someone else's life. And when she dared to say no, they turned violent. Leon's attorney tried to soften the blow. My client acted out of momentary stress. He regrets his actions deeply. But Mr. Harrison countered immediately. Regret after arrest is not redemption. Lena Grace didn't provoke violence, she survived it. And she deserves more than empty apologies. When I took the stand, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I looked the judge in the eye and said, they didn't just try to take my house. They tried to erase my voice, my peace, my future. And when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to break me. That was all I needed to say. The verdict came swiftly. Leon was found guilty of assault with intent to harm. He was sentenced to 2 years in state prison. Tina and Emily were convicted of aiding and abetting. They received 18 months each in county jail. No parole. No suspended sentence. No fines in place of jail time. Just cold, hard consequences. As they were handcuffed and let out, Emily turned to me one last time. You'll always be alone. I met her stare, calm and unwavering. Maybe, but at least I'll be free. And with that, the judge's gavel came down. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was something better. Peace. When I stepped back into the house after the trial, everything looked the same, but everything had changed. The walls were the same shade of pale blue. The hallway creaked in the same spot near the staircase. The kitchen still smelled faintly of old wood and vanilla. But now, there were no eyes watching me. No insults muttered under breath. No expectations weighing me down like iron chains. This time, when I walked in, I didn't feel like a guest. I felt like the owner. Over the next few days, I started cleaning out their rooms, not out of spite, but as a form of closure. Every drawer, every box, every perfume bottle, receipt, and old makeup palette. Gone. Some things I donated. Some I tossed in the trash. All of it felt like sweeping away years of dust that had collected on my soul. In the attic, I found something that stopped me cold. An old trunk. Inside was a photo album with my name written across the front. Lena's firsts, in my father's handwriting. I sat on the attic floor and opened it. Photos of him holding me, playing with me, laughing with me. His smile was real. So was mine. And for the first time in years, I wept. Not from sadness, but from connection. I wasn't forgotten. I was never unloved. Not by him. That night, I made a cup of tea in the same kitchen where Tina once called me selfish. And for the first time, it didn't echo with guilt. It whispered something else. Start something new. I'd always loved cooking. It was the one thing that made me feel grounded. So I pulled out my laptop, propped up my phone, and hit record. Hi. I'm Lena. Welcome to Meals with Meaning. I cooked. I talked. I shared a recipe and a story. I didn't expect much, but that first video went viral within a week. Comfort food after cutting off toxic people, that was the title. The comments poured in. I felt this in my soul. You gave me courage to walk away too. I've never cried over garlic bread until today. People weren't just watching. They were healing with me. In 2 months, Meals with Meaning hit over 100,000 subscribers. Brands reached out. A cookbook offer landed in my inbox. And for the first time ever, my voice wasn't just heard. It was wanted. All from the same kitchen where I was once told to stay silent. Now, every time I pressed record, I began the same way. Welcome home. You're safe here. Because I had built something. Not from money. Not from family support. But from the very pain they tried to bury me with. I had turned it into power. As Meals with Meaning continued to grow, so did my sense of peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hustling for scraps of approval. I wasn't proving my worth to people who never deserved me. I was simply living. Then the messages started coming. Kevin, my cousin, texted. Didn't think you had it in you. Guess I was wrong. I didn't reply. A week later, Aunt Colleen called. She was quiet at first, then said softly, I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Truly. That one I answered. She had never joined in their cruelty. She had always seen me, maybe not clearly, but kindly. The most surprising message of all? Ethan, Emily's ex-fiancé. It came as an email. Lena, I owe you an apology. I should have seen who they really were. After they moved in with me, it became clear. The entitlement. The manipulation. I cut ties 2 months ago. I'm so sorry you went through all that alone. I'm glad you're free. And I'm glad you're thriving. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need anything from him. Not closure. Not validation. Not anymore. Sometimes, silence is the most honest response. I filmed one last video in that first series. A simple recipe, garlic butter pasta with herbs. The same dish my dad used to make when I was a little girl standing on a step stool beside him, giggling as I stirred the pot. As I cooked, I told that story. And at the end, I looked into the camera and said, they tried to take everything. Even this house. But this kitchen, this peace, this future, it's mine now. No tears. No dramatic music. Just truth. And somehow that video hit deeper than any before. One morning, I woke to sunlight spilling across the kitchen tiles. The same kitchen where I once stood with my hands trembling, had bleeding, soul fractured. But now, the light felt different.
Warm.
Inviting.
Mine.
Even the scar near my hairline just above my right temple no longer felt like a wound. It was a reminder. I survived. Not just a broken vase. Not just years of silence and emotional neglect. But the very lie that I had to earn love to deserve peace. Now I knew better. I stepped out onto the back porch with a mug of hot coffee in hand. The herb garden I planted just weeks ago was blooming. Basil.
Rosemary. Thyme.
The same soil where I once buried my rage. Now it grew hope. Then my phone buzzed. Congratulations, Lena. Your YouTube channel just hit 500,000 subscribers. I laughed softly, genuinely. Not the kind of laugh that comes from relief, but the kind that comes from knowing you made it out. Messages poured in from across the world. You helped me leave an abusive marriage. You gave me the strength to say no. Your story saved me. There were thousands of Lenas out there, women like me. And now, they weren't alone. I added one final line to my channel's bio. This home was nearly taken from me. But I stood my ground and built a new life in the same walls they tried to break me in. Welcome to Meals with Meaning, where healing begins in the kitchen. I opened every window in the house. Let the spring air rush in. The smell of garlic, lemon, and peace filled the air. This wasn't just a house anymore. It was a monument to survival. That evening, I stood outside, watching golden light flicker through the windows. This was the same place where my father once tucked me in. My mother tried to erase him. I became invisible. And now, I had stepped fully into the light. The porch still creaked. The tree outside the kitchen still danced in the wind. But I was not the same. There were no lawsuits hanging over my head. No guilt. No apologies owed. Just me.
Free.
Mr. Blake Harrison had called earlier that day. It's all done. The case is closed. Your name is clean. The title is secure. I stood in the doorway, the smell of fresh lemon cake filling the air. The kitchen, the hallway, the living room, every room once felt like a battlefield. Now, they felt like chapters in a story I was finally proud to tell. I opened the front door, let the night air in, and whispered, they tried to take this house. They tried to take me. But I didn't just protect a home. I reclaimed a life. And with that, I stepped inside. Not as a victim, but as Lena Grace. A woman who turned every wound into wisdom. Every scar into strength. And every kitchen into a place of healing. If Lena's story moved you, if it reminded you that no one deserves to be treated like they're invisible in their own home, then please take a moment to support this channel. Like the video if her journey inspired you. Share your thoughts and stories in the comments. We read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories just like this. Your support helps these voices reach those who need them most. Thank you for watching.